Hello, I'm Jamie.
Hello, I'm Mark, and it's time for another episode of Through the Garden Gate.
Hello, George. Ain't seen you for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Where you been?
Last night, last Tuesday, I couldn't come because I was at swimming, and then the week before that, yeah.
I can't remember.
I know.
That's ancient history, that is.
What?
Hey,
Ancient
Kim.
history, isn't it?
What the hell?
Stand up, George.
Why? Look, I've got a new
Ooh, through the garden gate jumper. I've not even got one of them, George.
I know. My dad has to make you one.
We'll get you a nice bright colour to replace your black hoodie.
No, I love my black hoodie.
Maybe.
Your grey hoodie, actually. It's a bit faded.
Yeah, it's
Maybe. I know
quite
what.
old.
Get a blue one for winter.
Blue for winter.
What have you been up to, George? Have you done any gardening?
Yeah.
Have you?
Yeah.
What have you been doing then?
Back down where my fort is, we've been making a willow fence.
Oh, wow. So you're making another willow structure. You made the dome in the spring.
We're making a fence.
Fence.
A fence
We're
and a
getting
hedge.
the old stems off the dome and making them into a fence.
Oh, right. So you're cutting the... That's good,
Do you
isn't
know
it?
what the big problem was?
Go on.
We were about halfway through. We had done about 4 foot, and then we realised we were like trying to dig and we couldn't, and we were trying to put them in and we couldn't get them in. And we dug the ground up and there was a big there was like a big concrete base of a wall.
Oh, no.
So my dad had to get an axe and I needed to go and get a mallet and we had to smash it up.
And then you put the new whips in. I like to just... I think I have told your dad, but he's got me in trouble by doing that dome last year because now Teresa wants me to make something. So I've got to make something. I've got to make something willow now. But it's good, isn't it? That you can just push a stick in the ground and it grows.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And you've got a tunnel which leads to your trampoline and your tree house.
Yeah.
Brilliant. George, Jenny has said, I hope you've had a good week.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course you have.
Looking at the comments, make sure there's anybody else saying hello to you. Because if Jamie does it, it'll break it.
Oh yeah, we don't want it to break again.
No, I'll just have to leave mine alone. If I see it, I see it.
Indeed.
Had all your snow gone?
No.
No, we've got all of it.
Oh.
There's still a little bit left of it. When we were at school, we were allowed out and we were like having snowball fights and stuff.
Oh. We had a little bit, but then it rained on top and melted it all away.
You see it on the polytunnel. If I go up.
You see it on the polytunnel?
Yeah, there it is.
Hey, when we were at school, there was about... Me and my dad and my mum were expecting about 3 foot deep of snow, the way that it was snowing last night.
Mm-hmm.
Really? It happened.
George, I've got a good trick. Don't tell your mum, though, but when she comes to pick you up in a few minutes, you can bang the top of the polytunnel and cover her with snow.
Don't put your hands through it, because it's probably quite... You probably end up wetting yourself because there's condensation inside.
No, Dad, I don't care. Oh, Jenny, thanks. I'll whip it. I'll hit it. I'll jump the top.
Kim said, oh, she's watching. I'm in trouble. Oh, no. And Kim said 3 foot deep is a lot of snow, George.
What have you got yourself into, Jenny?
Oh, I don't know. I'm in trouble now.
So me and George thought we'd create his own section for the beginning of the podcast, which he can do each week when he comes on every
Yeah,
other week.
fact of the week.
Oh, okay.
George's gardening fact.
Yeah, that's it. George's gardening fact. Come on, then. You got one for this week?
Right, yeah.
Hey, Mario.
Did you know that lemons float but limes sink?
Oh, do they? Why is that then?
Probably because lemons are more airy.
Airy?
Airy?
Water.
What?
And also,
Okay.
another fact about lemons is lemons aren't a natural fruit. They are created by humans. Whereas limes are a real fruit.
So it was all limes at one point, but then we made lemons.
It's a mix between citrona and what are they called? The orange. Is it sour
Oranges.
orange? No, it's a specific orange.
I'm
orange
I'm here, Jamie.
Mario just says, "Love the hat. Where's yours, Jamie and George?"
I didn't need a hat.
I got my waterproof one on today.
Oh, do you?
Yes.
Already.
Come on, then. Go get ready. Let's see if this backfires.
Is that why plums sink and nectarines float?
Maybe.
Possibly.
Well,
Nectarines.
plums and nectarines aren't really the same sort of thing, though, are they? They're like
Completely opposite.
limes and lemons are citrus.
Jamie, I don't think she's here right now.
It won't be long.
I know.
Yeah, plums are really dense, aren't they?
Maybe if it was like a peach and a nectarine.
That does not work.
Oh dear, sorry.
Careful.
You're going to put your fist through it in a minute, George. It'll be my fault. Your dad will be billing me for a new polytunnel cover.
I'll come and nick your polytunnel that you need to pull.
Nectarines are made from peaches and plums, I believe. Are they? I suppose both stone fruits, aren't they?
Yeah.
Whoa. Well done, George.
See you later.
Bye.
You're soaking wet now.
Bye.
Okay, crazy.
Bye.
See you in the morning.
See you, mate.
See you in 2 weeks then.
See you later.
Bye.
Whoops.
It's all right. The roof is still there. Must be some weight on that though. It's,
that's the thing. They've got to be strong, haven't they?
yeah.
That's like that shed I just made. I had to calculate for snow and things.
Did you completely make like it wasn't a pre-made thing? You've literally designed it.
Yeah.
Got wood.
I got wood. Made shed.
Made house.
It's big, isn't it?
Ginormous.
I know. Nearly 5 meters before.
You could race those
The two
lawnmowers around inside the shed.
Far off. There's lots of space in there. Yeah.
Are they putting?
It's really good. I enjoyed that.
Or is it literally just them?
I made him a little bench in one corner, and they've got a little trailer for one of the ride-ons, which is going in there as well. But yeah, that's
brilliant.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. It was a big change from doing electrics.
Yeah, I mean, you really undersold it when you said you were building a shed. It was it's not like, oh, it's only going to take me a day. Just build this shed. It's like full-on foundations.
Oh yeah, it's right from the ground up, concrete and shuttering concrete and everything. Yeah. Hey Dan. Yeah, it's good. It's good couple of weeks, on and off.
Yeah. The weather's not been too bad, other than
I got it. Yeah, I timed it right to do that shed. Since I finished the roof and finished it, it's been awful.
Yeah.
Yeah, really bad. Oh, I miss you too, Dan. Hope you talk to me, not everyone else.
Definitely not talking to me. I didn't spend the
Look who's here.
weekend.
Marcy.
I say it, you're going to get licked.
Okay. Right, shall we get him in?
Yeah. Yeah, my polytunnel looks a lot worse for wear because I didn't actually shut the door, so everything in here is now looking a bit dead. Oops.
Oh, thanks, Dan. Yeah, little Mossy.
So tonight's guest is living the dream, living off the land in Suffolk, delivering fresh veg straight from his field. Recently featured on BBC's The Farmer's Country Showdown, growing organically, he claims his farm has worked harder building him than the other way round. Let's get him in. It's Greg Harrison at Sunshine and Green.
Hello.
Here he
Hello.
is. Hello.
Working. Look at that. First time and everything.
Straight in.
Magic.
How you doing?
We're professionals at this now, you know.
It's amazing, isn't it, really? Everything just works.
I know.
Yeah.
It's a miracle.
Didn't start with.
No,
How you doing? You right?
good, yeah. Yeah. It's dark outside a lot of the time, so a bit more restful this time of year.
Let's
Kind of
do a bit
nice,
of
really.
weather. Let's talk a bit of weather. Have you had snow today?
No, not at all. Just a standard drizzly autumn day, really. Nothing exciting about it at all, but a lot colder.
Yeah.
Definitely colder than it's been. I mean, we've been spoiled, I think, really.
Oh, definitely have. It's been lovely up until about 2 days ago, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, I mean, 2 or 3 weeks ago, it was 20 degrees. It's kind of crazy, but not going to complain because it was all right. But
Yeah.
you know.
No.
So I see you've had snow. Whereabouts are you guys?
So I'm in Lincolnshire.
And I'm
Okay.
Norfolk, so I'm a bit closer to you.
Okay, nice.
Because you're Suffolk, aren't you? Sudbury, was it?
That's right. Yeah, Sudbury. So on the Essex border. In fact, from the farm, you can see Essex. There's the River Stour is at the bottom of the hill. The other side of that is Essex. So we're right on the southern bit. Technically West Suffolk, but right on the edge. So
Yeah.
yes, it's a good spot. I really like it. I'm very lucky to have found this farm actually. Complete fluke. So
Usually the way it happens.
it is
Yeah.
really, you know, when you think there's no hope left, and it's like, hang on a minute, let's just try this one thing. It's like, oh, look, there's a farm, great. So yeah, complete stroke of luck.
So tell us before the farm then. What did you do before you come across the farm?
Well, before this farm, I was on another farm. So
Okay.
I'll run you through the brief life story
Yeah.
up to this point. So
Perfect.
my first career, I worked on sailing boats, on super yachts. So I sailed from everywhere from the Indian Ocean to the Caribbean to the Mediterranean.
Ooh.
And then there were a few seeds were sown during that time where there were instances where I couldn't buy food with money, because people wanted things. They wanted one guy wanted calamari fishing hooks. He held this beautiful fruit. I couldn't buy it. And I felt quite vulnerable. But it was just a little seed in my mind. It took years for that to actually become something. But I just thought I really, really need to be able to grow my own food. It felt like something I needed to do. My grandparents are both farmers on both sides. My granddad's garden wasn't just like, as a kid, it was a maze. So one end was all edible, and the rest of it was just pots and plants, and there was an old tractor there and stuff like this. So I kind of grew up with it, but then I needed to do it myself. So I started fiddling around. In my last job, I was able to live in a flat, started growing things on a balcony, I think like most people do, just shoving loads of seeds in one pot, hoping it grows. And then it just goes really badly, but you feel really proud because you've got one little tomato on this massive bush. You're like, wow, that cost me £80. So that's how it all started. But then I really wanted to get into farming. So I was living in Mallorca, working on a boat there. So from there, I phoned and emailed, I don't know how many farms, so many, trying to find one. I wanted to do horticulture, but I was worried about getting most of the jobs are on big farms where you can kind of just like, right, you're a fruit picker for the summer, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I was a bit worried that I wasn't going to learn very much there.
Mm.
Again, naively, I probably would have learned loads there,
Yeah.
but I wanted to be somewhere smaller, a bit more mixed. So complete tangent, ended up on a dairy farm. Yeah, so he had dairy, arable, he kept pigs and sheep, made his own cheese. So there was quite a varied amount of different jobs to do on the farm. He offered an apprenticeship, none of which actually happened, but I worked there for a year, got a lot of experience, and that another seed was sown in that, well, not a seed, something germinated there where I wanted to do fruit and veg 100%, knew that. Or full respect, I love milk and cheese, but I never want to work in a dairy farm again. It is relentless. Those people are
I
very,
can
very
imagine.
special.
I
And I mean that as a
can
compliment.
Yeah.
imagine.
But yeah, whilst I was there, my first year, the mountain of inputs, fertilizer and other stuff that arrived, mostly from abroad, just made me go, maybe organic isn't such a gimmick, which I thought it was at the time. I didn't really think anything of it. I didn't know what it was. I thought this is silly, whatever. But when I saw all that stuff arrive, I was like, I need to find something. Go back to what I was saying about growing my own food. All those inputs, all that said to me was, I can't produce those and I can't find them locally.
Yeah.
Therefore, they might not last my life. There's a vulnerability in a growing system if you have to import lots. So the next best thing was organic, and I was a bit scared that I would get lost on some hippie farm and all this, but I found the Soil Association were doing an apprenticeship, Future Growers Scheme, and I found a 30-acre fruit and veg farm in Sussex, Cherry Gardens Farm. He gave me the job, and I went for it. At the same time, I went to Hadlow College to do horticulture in the evenings, just RHS level 2. And yeah, that was 3 years of my life, really. Learned a lot there. He was really good. Like I said, it's 30 acres, but he had a lot of kit. So it was a very conventional style, a lot of machines, a lot of tractors, a lot of polytunnels. Really, really good guy to work for. Cracked the whip, kept us all working hard, but also really loved the organic thing, really loved the wildlife, and just set the tone on what I wanted to do. So I feel really lucky to have found myself there. But I got bored and realised I had to go and do my own farm. You know, I think there's only if you're not taking the risks yourself, then it's easy to get bored. So anyway, my parents had a 10-acre farm, which is where I grew up, which was just hay fields, had some horses on it. So they said I could use that. So off I went, built a polytunnel, built a fridge in one of the barns, and that's where I started no dig. Basically because I was skint. I didn't have the money for any tools. So I was like, well, I can buy some Mypex and some compost, and I can do that. So I started with some real success. It was really good. The ground was nice. Things grew. Box scheme stuff. Customers started to grow. Not very big. I wasn't able to do very much there. But then, and I'm cutting a lot out just to get to where we are today, because the last 4 years are the most interesting, I think. 2019, things went majorly wrong. Parents got divorced, sold the farm. And in the meantime, I ended up in hospital waiting for heart surgery because some genetic thing that I'd had my whole life that flared up then, I guess, with what was going on with the farm and everything. Just I ended up, in hospital. So that was a bit annoying. So I had to shut everything down. The farm was gone, and I was kind of left sitting there like, what do we do now? So whilst I was waiting for the second surgery, the first one didn't work. That's another story, all of that. But whilst I was waiting for that, I thought, what am I going to do? I need a farm. I can't do anything else. Really want to do this now. Can't afford a farm necessarily. Can't buy land. I mean, I'm sure it's the same way you are, but I think you'd be lucky if you get somewhere for 10 grand an acre, and then you got to pull the infrastructure on top.
Yeah.
So, basically forget it. And then one day I was sitting there feeling depressed, and I thought, my granddad, he had a council tenancy back in the day. I think it was 7 acres. He had a suckler herd and bred Irish draft horses. And I thought of that. I thought, I wonder if Suffolk has any council farms left. I know Essex have sold theirs. I know Cambridgeshire had some. And I was like, well, I just Googled it, and there they were. There were 2 available in West Suffolk.
Wow.
The one I'm on now, and one in Brandon. I think it was Brandon, somewhere over that way. And no offence to anyone that lives in Brandon, but I was like, I don't want to live there.
No, don't blame you. I know Brandon.
Exactly. So I was like, and also the farm I think was like 200 acres. I can't even afford to begin on that one.
Yeah, that's massive.
Yeah, and I was completely skint. Bearing in mind heart surgery and not working for a while, nothing left.
Yeah.
So I found this farm. It's actually the farm I'm on now. It's called Ark Farm. It's 125 acres, but there was one small field in the middle that was 4 acres, and it had an old ruin at the end of it. And I thought, well, 4 acres is too small, but it's a foot in the door, and the fact there's a ruin there means that maybe the council might want to like clear that up and make it good. So I put in a phone call, and I had 3 days or something before the deadline for applications. So the guy goes, yeah, you got to get your application in. I'll send you a form. Immediately when I got the form, it was for arable, because that's all the farms do here. So it was, how much sugar beet are you going to grow? How much wheat? So I was like, forget this. Luckily, because I was out of work and doing nothing, waiting for surgery, I had written a business plan. So I just replied, and it was a good one because I had nothing else to do. So I had 3 months of just like writing. So I just sent this business plan over and was like, okay, look, I'm not doing anything from your application. I hope this is all right. So let's see. And then COVID hit and the long wait. So I didn't hear from them for 4 months, maybe 5 months. In the meantime, I got a gardening job, a local fancy house down the road, which I managed to bank everything. The world was closed. It was 2020. So I was just literally, my life was so simple. Go gardening, really lovely garden, nice people to work for. Godsend of a job. Just went home, rode my bike on the weekend. That was it for months. Just waiting, sitting there like, come on.
Please.
Yeah, because there was nothing else around. I mean, I carried on looking elsewhere, and it's like, well, what am I going to do? I can't, like, renting after my experience. I know they were my family, but after renting from that, I kind of learned a lesson really, that you've got to pick your landlord as much as a landlord has to pick your tenant. The relationship's got to be right. You do need paperwork. It's really boring stuff, but you do need all the paperwork. Anyway, cut a long story out short. Again, had an interview. Had to wait another couple of months, and then finally they said, you've got it. So I was like, yes. Brilliant. October 2020, I got the keys to this place, and pile of bricks, beat up old arable field. I mean, it had a almost failed crop of wheat in it. I was like, oh, what is this? There was a guy, I'll be polite, but basically there was a guy squatting on it, and he's still there. And it was a mess. You can imagine, like, I think the barn burned down 15 years ago. There were burnt mattresses, all sorts of junk all over. It was just like a tip. The council said they have a duty of care, so they took the old barn down and gave me a concrete pad. And that was it. The rest was basically up to me. In the end, they settled and they paid to put power in as well, because the quote came back much more than they expected. But they couldn't do much more. Their budgets are so small. You know, that these estates from 10 years of austerity are so underfunded. That's the whole other story we can talk about another time. But the potential they have, if they had the correct funding, is mind-blowing. I think Suffolk Estates is something like 13,000 acres. And the guys that run it, like, you're talking not just land, that's farms, houses, all sorts of stuff. and currently they're paying for just to repair the farms, rather than trying to future-proof them and do things they could do, or allow people like me to come in and grow veg, because they don't have anyone growing veg, and I think I'm the first. There will be one other council farm that is organic. He's just currently going through conversion. So I set to work anyway. So we'll get on to horticulture now. So October 2020, I bought some trees. Wanted to design an agroforestry farm. So conveniently, the field was 140 meters long, so it made it really easy to divide it into 7 plots basically, for a nice easy rotation. Each plot is divided with a row of fruit trees. I include raspberries in that as well as a perennial. I tried kiwis. Turns out they don't grow well in the middle of an exposed field in Suffolk, as it happens. I'm not going to give up. I think I can get kiwis to grow, but I didn't have the time to give them the right attention. Anyway, and we've got black currants. So those trees went in. First thing, I was like, right, I've got a 10-year lease. I need to get trees in to get a return on these. So let's put them in. I wanted agroforestry because it ticks so many boxes. Like, if you please find something wrong with agroforestry, because to me, there's nothing wrong. It's the best thing ever, and it's going to change the way everyone farms.
Can you explain that a little bit for us, please?
Yeah. So basically, I'll start with what spurred me onto it. So my boss, when I was doing my apprenticeship, there were patches around the farm where trees had just come up, willow and oak and all sorts. We were talking about it one day, and he goes, "Yeah, well, of course, the countryside wants to be a forest. If we walk away, in 100 years, it's going to be a forest. So that's its natural state, and we've turned it, at least here anyway, in Suffolk. Suffolk is one of the most deforested areas. So there's the Eastern Claylands. Used to be a big forest. It's all gone. So it's like, well, we can't have the forest back because we need the food, but there's got to be a compromise. So agroforestry seems to be it. What it does for the farm, another aspect of looking at it is, hang on, let's go back a step. So it wants to be a forest. So let's try and compromise. Let's create forest areas where we can grow the food between the trees. So you have a row of trees. In my farm, the trees are 20 meters apart, and all the veg is grown between them. This essentially creates like a little walled garden, if you like, once the trees are established. So you have protection from wind for your crops, a little microclimate, better water retention. I'm talking about benefits for the plant, our annual crops. But for the wider sort of environment, you're obviously putting trees in, a lot of benefits there. It's extra wildlife habitat. So bugs and stuff can live under them. I think something like 340 species of insects will live in an apple tree. And then, of course, all the birds and things associated with that. Most importantly, as well as all of that, we get food. So the farm gets an income. Now, when you're a 4-acre farm, you don't get any subsidies. There aren't any available. So I was like, knowing that the environment is as important as the food, you need both. It's like, how can I compromise on this? How can I create more habitat and food? It was like agroforestry. That's the answer. So it increases the farm income, gives us more food, and in the process pays for more habitat. That's the simplest way of explaining it. Roundabout kind of way. So we've got several types of apple: Jonagold, green sleeves, and a local russet called St Edmund's russet. Conference pears, and I want to say Concord. I can't remember that. It might be Comis. Anyway, plums, which aren't growing very well. They all seem to be dying for some reason. Raspberries are the best things ever. They're an early, and they just keep going. They're so delicious. I love them. Black currants were donated by my uncle in Yorkshire. And you talk about, I heard you saying earlier about just poking sticks in the ground and watching them grow. Like when I took those black currants, he came in February It was cold. I had hand dug over the bed for the raspberries and the currants, 80 by 1.5 meter beds, just in an old arable field in clay ground. I was like, well, I don't have any machines, it's too wet, so I'll just fork it over. Which is a really dumb idea. And then like a week later, it's like he turns up with these bags of sticks and goes, there you go. I was like, well,
I didn't
what?
need to dig that then.
Well, yeah. And also, you just poke them in the ground. And you imagine like 4 acre just stubble, right? I hadn't done anything to this.
Yeah.
And I'm just poking sticks in the ground like, oh, that's a good idea. That's definitely going to work, you know? Like, but they did.
Yeah.
All but like 2, I think, came up out of maybe, they put in like 80 of them, I think. So, and they're a great crop
They
now.
were
They
black
do
currants, did you say?
black and
Black.
red currants, yeah. Same with the raspberries, you know, you take a stick, there's a bit more root on a raspberry, but you just poke it in the ground. It's like, wow, great. And somehow they grow, and it's amazing. But they're all cropping, they're nicely established now. So now the farm actually looks like an agroforestry farm. You know, it's got the trees coming up, they're nice and blossomy and leafy in the summer. And actually had some apples this year. So
you planted the trees in 2020, did you say?
yeah. So autumn 2020, and then a few in winter of 2021. So that period of time.
Yeah.
I was still working full time as a gardener at that point as well. No real option to do so. You know, the farm wasn't making any money. It was all out. So I was just waiting for the new season to come. Put some polytunnels up. Tried to get planning permission to put a barn on the site where the old barn was, riddled with pain there. Turns out planning departments are, I don't know, enter some horrible swear word, and that's probably suitable for them. I can't express how much pain they cause. And this guy I know who's setting up another small farm near Bury St Edmunds with the council, same thing, loads of problems with planning. It's nuts. It's I won't go into details. We'll talk about horticulture, but you can imagine. So at that point, again, I was pretty skint. I had nothing left and I had no equipment. So I was like, I'm going to go to no dig again. Let's get that going. Bought in a load of mushroom compost from Capel Mushrooms, big organic mushroom grower down the road. And I put half the farm down to no dig beds, and I put the other half down to a cover crop to give myself time. So it's like, if I grow on 2 acres, I can probably manage that myself. I can build a marketplace, and I can put some health back into the soil because it was wrecked. Like years of just hardcore arable, just nonsense. So the cover crop I put in was chicory, cocksfoot, and 2 types of clover. Cotswold seeds, humus, not hummus. doesn't build hummus. That would be really weird. But anyway, so that's amazing. So cocksfoot grass, the roots go down 1.5 meters, as does chicory. So it's pulling up minerals, it's pulling the soil apart, it's feeding all those soil microbes, and that went in for 2 years. As for no dig, like I said, I started it because I was skint. The benefits to the soil were amazing, but I've had to pull away from it this year. As now I've got a bit more, and I listened to your podcast last week, and with, is it Roots Allotments? Is that the guy? Really interesting. And I think on a smaller scale, like a gardener allotment, no dig is the way. I don't see why you wouldn't do it any other way. It's so simple, and you've got time. It's better. However, at scale, it becomes quite hard because some of the perennial weeds you have to get out by hand. And when you've got 2 acres and you're on your own, that suddenly becomes a real challenge, particularly in clay soil. The first year was great. The next year, really difficult because it caps over winter and it's so hard to plant into. So I started to get inconsistent growth patterns on there. And the biggest reason for that is the fact that being organic, I can't put that big 1 or 2 inch layer of compost on top because there's too much nitrogen in it. depending on what you use. So if I could have got enough leaf mold to cover 2 acres,
Yeah.
maybe that would have been fine. But I was using mushroom compost or manure, and you simply can't use too much because there's like nitrogen is obviously great, but it's also a pollutant. So with organic, there are restrictions on what you can use. So I couldn't put a big layer down. So I couldn't get that what do you call it? That layer of organic matter on top to protect the
barrier.
soil and feed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So what would you call it? The organic horizon. It just wasn't there.
Yeah.
And again, on a garden or an allotment, that's easy to do, easy to achieve. Definitely do it.
So that's the Soil Association saying you can't do that at that depth, because
No,
then
you can do that, but it's to do with the nitrogen content. So I'm only allowed, put me on the spot, I should know my organic standards, shouldn't I? I'm only allowed so many kilos of nitrogen per hectare. And
right.
manure has a lot in it. Things like wood chip has less in it, so I could use a lot more. If I could have covered it all with straw or leaf mold, that would have been an option. But then you start gets quite expensive and hard to get. So it becomes more of a challenge. You know, when I brought in the first year, I brought in 36 tons of mushroom compost.
Mm.
That was my absolute limit of nitrogen. Couldn't do any more. If I had, I would have not been able to certify as organic. So it becomes a lot harder. Now, maybe green waste compost, that's much lower in nitrogen. That's mostly carbon, I think. But again, I still wouldn't be able to get that covering. Like the Charles Dowding, good inch, 2 inches, which is great. Again, like small scale, perfect.
Sorry, Greg.
Also,
So if you manure is natural,
yep,
it's not the big, massive bags of nitrogen that you see the farmers chucking in the back of their hoppers.
yep.
So
The naturally occurring nitrogen.
they're penalising you for naturally occurring stuff.
Well, it's to do with the fact that if you have soil will only hold so much nitrogen. So a way of thinking about it, if you have a muck heap, for example,
yeah,
you have to be really careful where the water runs off from your muck heap, because if it goes into rivers or streams, you end up with pollution, and it's actually the worst part of that pollution is the nitrogen pollution. That's what you're really watching out for. So the soil will only hold so much nitrogen. Now you're right, I agree with you. Like if you're using manure, it holds that a lot better because it's held up within the manure. It's not like the fertilizer you'd use on a conventional farm where it's water soluble.
yeah.
So manure has to be broken down to release those nutrients, but it still does leach off. So imagine if you put an entire, like if my farm had a muck heap over the whole thing, the amount of pollution you'd get in the ditches is massive. So what you're trying to do is reduce that. But also you want to keep it within the limits of what soil would naturally have. So you probably wouldn't find in any natural soil 2 inches of manure. You'd find a mixture. You'd have some animal droppings. You'd have, if it was in a forest, you'd have a lot of leaf mold, a grassland. You'd have a lot of thatch, wouldn't you? So those don't have a lot of nitrogen, and animals would graze and move on. So do you see where I'm going with that? It's like if you have a blend, if you have manure with your leaf mold, perfect. If you can get that balance. So that's why they put restrictions on it. So I do use a fertilizer as well. Do you know Green Vale, the chicken manure pellets? Have you ever used them? Really great product, but you'll see on the bag it says Soil Association approved, restricted use, and that is simply, you don't need permission to use it, but if you use too much of it, you'll have a problem. And they do check. They want to see exactly how much fertilizer I've used every single year. So with that in mind, I couldn't really do the no dig properly anyway. So I wasn't getting as many of the benefits. The soil was improving just with a light mulch, but it was so hard to plant into, stony clay ground. I couldn't get a hoe in there. So weed control, even just annual weeds, was getting so hard. So I'm compromising. So this year I bought a power harrow. I have a tine cultivator, and I bought a plough. I need a plough to get rid of the green manure. There's no other way. Cocksfoot grass. Oh my God, it's amazing for the soil, but you can't kill it. It just doesn't go away. So I've had to plough that, but only shallow. So we're talking, this year was my first time using the plough properly. So I was not this accurate. Some was this deep, some was this deep. The plan is to be about 4 or 5 centimeters deep, maximum, just to turn the top over. And I'll probably do that once in a rotation, so once every 5 or 6 years. And then in between, just a tine harrow just to stir the surface up, and then a power harrow behind it. And we're talking that deep, enough to get a plug plant in. Because the soil structure underneath, I think, is better natural. So if that can be created by plant roots going down and worms and microbes doing their thing, but we need to be able to work in it as well. So I need to be able to get a dibber in, a planter in, a hoe, that kind of stuff. So we just want that much. But I also think, having seen no dig side by side with cultivated ground, the way it's been applied here anyway, is I get much more consistent growth where it's been cultivated. Because I think if, when you put a dibber into uncultivated ground, you might compact it a little bit, and then that plant won't get its roots in. Whereas the next one, the dibber might go in easier, so that one gets its roots away. Just little tiny bits like that. Whereas when it's cultivated, everything's the same. So you get really consistent growth.
You need that. You need to know what you're going to get to a certain extent, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. I guess that's the difference.
Guessing.
No, and when it comes to making money out of it, you need to be able to say, right, I've got a tray of 150 plugs here. I'm definitely going to get 100 to maturity and be able to sell them at worst case scenario. So you really need to be on that. But it has revolutionized things. But when you start with zero, you use what you can. And no dig, brilliant. Like, I've got to do this. It worked. It got me through the first 2 years. We got going, and then now I've been able to buy the tools just to be able to go a little bit further forward with it. Plus, we're now using the full 4 acres. So I needed to do something. I was able to buy a wheel hoe, simple tool, revolutionized my life. Rather than taking an hour a bed, it can now take me maybe 15 minutes to weed a bed. So yeah, changed my life on that one as well. Just little simple tools that you don't think much of, but they cost quite a lot of money. And again, you start from zero. That's what you have to do. So,
and small margins, I imagine, from what you're doing.
Yes, exactly. So it takes time, and like I say, it's taken me until this year to give myself a salary where I can pay my rent, my bills, and have a little bit left over. So it's 4 years really to get to that point. And for the first 3 years was working full time elsewhere just to be able to do that. So I haven't had any balance. 2021, 2022, I was literally same thing: home, sleep, farm. That's it. I went and cut grass at a big fancy house. That was it. That was my life. But it got us here, and it's definitely worth it. The farm's coming alive now. The box scheme is moving in a really nice direction. We've got a really good group of customers now, and new people all the time. I do a farmers market every week. It's great. I think people want this. I think this is the zeitgeist. People want British food. I think organic is getting a bit more sway now. Just people are asking questions anyway. And most importantly, just want to know where their food's come from. It's come from someone they know, from a farm down the road. There's no middlemen in there. It's all a fair price. That's where it should be, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
and nobody's been exploited.
No one's been exploited. No. And only me, but I choose it. So there you go. So yeah, it's been an adventure, and it's nice because we've started the last couple of years. Local horticultural societies have come to visit, and they've seen the progress, which has been really rewarding. Actually, I'd like to get some kids on. We had the cubs on the farm this year. That was fun. Mad bunch. I don't know how people work with kids every day. I mean, it was fun, but they're so intense.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, what else can I say with that? So in terms of the farm going forward, this year, and I know I mentioned to you briefly in the message, this year has been fascinating in terms of what I have discovered, and I hope that people will be able to take some advice from this, because we had a clopyralid contamination on the farm.
So
Have you heard of
that is I've when you mentioned that to me, I had to Google what that was.
Yeah.
I thought I knew what it was. So what we've heard it is called grazon. That's
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
that's the
exactly.
word I thought it was, but I googled it. So
Yeah,
that's a herbicide which just kills broadleaf
correct.
plants, weeds. Yes.
Yeah. So it also is in weedle, which people use on their lawns for
Okay.
dandelions, things like this.
Mhm.
It's most commonly used on grassland.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
well,
basically a
it's a
selective weed
selective
killer,
herbicide.
but it
Yeah.
doesn't
Yeah.
kill grass.
No,
Don't cut grass.
that's right.
They
It
spray all the
also,
horse fields.
yeah, it, Horsefields is where gardeners and allotment growers are most likely to get it from.
Yeah.
So, in the instance where I've got it from, I have a friend locally. He's a small holder, keeps goats and reindeer, keeps them indoors in winter in a deep litter system. And he said, "Do you want this? I've got, I don't know, 50 tons of it." I was like, "Yep, I'll take it." Paid for shipping. I composted it for a year and then put it on the farm. And I was sitting there in the spring this year. Tomatoes were the first thing to go in. Just 1 second, no, back to no dig. My tunnels remained no dig
Okay.
because they were under cover, and the
Hmm.
soil in there where I was able to control the water content and keep
Yeah.
the rain off, phenomenal, really
No,
nice.
no leaching.
Yeah, so that was just a little stop point. So my tomatoes went in first. Anyway, they had a mulch of this manure on, and I was sitting there looking at them after a couple of weeks. I was like, "What's wrong with them?" The leaves were starting to curl up. I was like,
Yeah.
Yellowy.
"That's not good." Kind of looks a little bit like aphid damage. They kind of just curl up a bit. And I was scratching my head. I sent pictures to everyone I knew. Someone sent me a link to a book which was like tomato diseases, and there's sort of like 10,000 in there. I was like, "Well, I'm not going to go through that." But it just didn't look like a disease. I was like, "I don't know."
No.
So I sent it to another friend, and she said aminopyralid, which is a related substance. And immediately I was like, "That's it." All the pictures were there. Yeah. So with that in mind, by that point, I'd already incorporated it into about half of the farm with
Oh,
my new power harrow. So I was like, "Oh,
Can't
good."
take that off.
Yeah. So I looked around, I was like, "What am I going to do?" Like, I didn't know what this stuff did. I didn't know what it was going to affect. There was already stuff planted in the ground. It was potentially going to knock out 70 or 80% of our crops.
oh my good
Um,
God.
and some of it I put on as a mulch, so I was able to remove that and get it away. A lot had been mixed in, most of it. So I went to HSE, Health and Safety Executive. They have a web page devoted to clopyralid, specially, and make of this what you will. The phone number on there to report it is the manufacturer's phone number. Yeah, say nothing on that one. Seems sketchy to me, but
What?
whatever. So I reported it to the manufacturers, who then came to the farm and immediately said, "This is," confirmed it, basically.
Tested it or whatever.
Um, they didn't need to. You just need to
Oh,
look at it. It's
okay.
obvious. I'll be careful what I say on this one, because I'm still not sure. These people are pretty sketchy. They offered me compensation, which I haven't taken because I could not sign what they were offering me. It's so manipulative. I I couldn't believe it. I was like, look, guys, you know, basically, the bottom line, shut up, don't tell anyone. I was like, well, I can't do that. Yeah, you know, and you're like, well, that's not right, is it? And the question I posed, I said, you know, if I destroy all these crops, because I think the problem is I've gone, well, I'm organic, so even if things don't die, can I take them to market?
No.
Are they going to take this stuff up?
Yeah.
And so they basically wanted me to destroy all of my crops. And I said, okay, let's run an experiment, a thought experiment. I destroy my crops. Horticultural Society come next week. What do I tell them? This was end of June. What do I say? Where are all my crops? And he said, well, you'll know how best to communicate. I said, oh, well, so you want me to lie? He said, oh, no, don't lie. It's like, well, I have to. Yeah. So it was, anyway, I walked away from them. I found out that there is a license to use this on food crops as well. So you can use it on brassicas, alliums, and certain salad crops. And it's one of the last post-emergent herbicides they have left to do this job. There's some more, but that's one of the main ones. A friend of mine who is an arable farmer, he used it on oilseed. But the crop was really bad, so he tried to put spring beans in, couldn't grow them because they're very sensitive to it. And this stuff was sprayed the year before, and he's like, and I still can't grow this stuff. So he doesn't grow.
That's how you test your compost, because it's been contaminating compost. If you put a bean in your compost,
exactly. And that's exactly what I want to get into, because in the new year, I think, and this is something that, you know, I think we should all do, is just demonstrate to people how you can test. So there's a couple of things you could do. When you pick up manure from somewhere, ask the question, have your paddocks being sprayed with Grazon or anything containing clopyralid? The stuff that I got, actually, it was sprayed on hay, which was sprayed on grass that was then made into hay, which you're not allowed to do as a farmer. You can't sell the hay. So the farmer had gone off label. We can't find him because it went through a hay merchant and an auction, so it's impossible. That was then fed to the goats that ate it, pooed it out, then it was composted. So this is years.
Unbelievable, isn't it?
It binds to cellulose in the grass, so it won't compost away. The only place that breaks cellulose down is soil microbes. So you need healthy soil. It's a big, please look after your soil. It's going to protect us from so many things. So the best thing to do, ask if they've sprayed it on their fields. Often with horses, they'll do spot spray of thistles, and then the horses will eat around it, and then they'll pick the poo up out of the field, put it in bags on a doorstep. Just check, just say, have you sprayed these fields in the last couple of years? If the answer is yes, be careful.
Leave it.
I would leave it. Also ask the question, where did you get your hay from? And do you have a spray record for that hay? Because I'm hoping in asking that question, people will go, why? I go, I'm feeding my horse this as well? Yes. Does it hurt the horse? Don't know. Maybe. So there's could there be other ways of getting this stuff away from people's food? And then the next thing to do, if you want to take it, please do. But exactly like you say, it's called a bioassay. Take a pot, put a bean in it, do 5. Also do another 5 with your own potting compost and maybe your own soil, so you've got a control group, and see how they come up. And you'll see they'll germinate normally, and then they'll start to take up the herbicide, and they'll curl up. They won't necessarily die, but they'll curl up. Now, this year I had planted the most squash I've ever grown, a couple of thousand squash plants, about 400 courgettes, all of them just curled up. Sunflowers ended up looking like burnt cigarettes, just rough little things. Celery, same thing, all curls up. Tomatoes, cucumbers, all of it just gone. Then there was the question of, have the crops that have been planted in it that are not affected by it, have they taken it up, and can I sell them as organic?
Mm.
The Soil Association ran some tests and they came back negative. So I was able to sell. So rather than losing 70 or 80% of the crops, we got it down to 40%, which is still massive. It's still too much. So there's a real pain. And basically, my mission really on that one is just to raise some awareness and say, look, please look after yourself. Test your manure. I don't think there's any point in trying to ban these chemicals because you're dealing with companies that are just so gross and huge. What's the point? But
World.
yeah, you just do a simple check. Grow some beans. You can do it. It's really cheap, really easy. Doesn't take very long.
That's for me because my wife's got horses.
Yeah.
So we've got 5 acre field out the back, which is our field. We've had it for 5 years, and there's never been a drop of. We know that came from it was an arable farm before a field before, and then we sowed the grass, and we know that's that. But we've got another 7 acres in another next village, which is one of Teresa's clients, a farmer, and he's not allowed to farm it because there's some ruin underneath it or something.
Right.
But that's just going to be left as grass. So we get that for nothing, really.
Right.
We get it for a very minimal payment a year, £100 a year. But he looks after it, and he sprays that. It looks beautiful. He puts nitrogen on it twice a year. He sprays it as well. It looks amazing. But then he takes that manure from those horses, and he takes them and puts them back on his land. So you can see how it goes from one to another to another.
Sure. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
there was an old man back in the spring came down with his wheelbarrow and said, "Can I have some of your horse manure?" And I said, "No." And I got him some from down here. Honestly, I took in some sacks from here and took it down to him. I said, "I'd rather you have ours." Because our field is horrendous. It was full of ragwort and thistles and God knows what because it hasn't been sprayed.
Yeah.
We would go around there every Sunday morning pulling ragwort out.
Yeah, I mean,
but that's what you've got to do.
It is, and that's the problem. Is it saves so much labour to use these things,
it's unbelievable.
but it has the potential to cause a lot of damage. And the question is, like, when the only place to report it to is the people that make it, you kind of think, well, how widespread is this? Now, Charles Dowding has a series of videos on YouTube about this stuff. There was an article in the Guardian maybe 10 years ago, 12 years ago. And there are other sources of this as well. So, like I said, you can use it on your lawn in Weedle.
I was just about to say.
Yeah, I went and had a look at the label.
Feed.
Yeah, well, exactly. And you look at Weedle, and it doesn't have a warning on it. It just says leave clippings in place for a couple of months, and do not put in a compost heap. Do not put. It doesn't say don't put in the brown bin.
Yeah.
So, anecdotally, I've heard stories of people that have bought in green waste compost. PAS 100. I can use that in organic, right? Certified. But it doesn't matter because heat, basically PAS 100 means it's been heated up to a certain temperature for a certain amount of time. That doesn't break down cellulose. So you just put it on there and it's there. And it's so patchy. You could go to a green waste thing and you could take a bit, oh, that's fine. And that bit over there is not.
Of course.
So, and then you've got it for X amount of years. Like, I don't know what the damage will be next year. So the areas that are contaminated, what's actually beautiful about this is the advice that was given to me by the chemical company to fix this was to grow green manures, put plants in. Yeah. This is it. So there's a summer mix, which was a mixture of brassicas and phacelia. So it's a quick mix. It flowers very quickly. It looked beautiful, right? Full of insects. But the point in that is to keep a cover on the soil, keep it moist, and keep the soil microbes active, because they will break down the cellulose, release the herbicide, which in turn has a half-life of about 6 weeks to 2 months, I think, something like that.
Okay.
But only once it's freed from cellulose. So I put that cover crop in. That grew really well, looked really good. I then had to put something in for winter just to keep the ground covered and try and keep those microbes active. But I also wanted to do is put a legume in there because legumes are very sensitive to it. In the spring, when the microbes are most active, they will release that clopyralid again, making it available to the legumes. So I put a rye vetch cover in, beautiful nitrogen mix, loads of organic matter. That'll be 5-6 foot tall in spring.
Wow.
But if there's any clopyralid in there, we'll see the symptoms in the vetch. So then I can make a decision on what I can grow there, whether or not I put another green manure in, or whether or not I can start cropping again. So it's a delicate balance like that, and the only way we can tell is by plants, and the only thing that fixes this is plants. So
I was going to say, somebody's asked if you can use mushrooms to help clean the soil.
you probably can, yeah. I mean, I don't know, but the point is you've got to have those plants that will stimulate all of the soil microbes, which will include fungus in the soil, right? A lot of these plants will have a relationship with fungus in the soil as well as other microbes and bacteria and things. So yes, you can. I don't know if it's maybe on a smaller scale it'd be cost effective to add. You can buy mycelia, can't you, and water those in. On my scale, I have to rely on what's there and give them the and I guess this is really what this summarizes organic farming in general. The difference between organic and conventional. Conventional, you feed the plant with water soluble fertilizers. In organic, you're just feeding the soil. You focus on that, and in turn, the soil will feed your plants. So these green manures are normal. Like when they told me that, I laughed because I was like, well, here we have one of the biggest chemical companies in the world telling me how to look after soil in ways that I'm already doing. And you're like, oh, cool, right. So organic is the answer.
Yeah.
It's like,
it's
okay.
ridiculous, isn't it?
It's hilarious. Yeah, it makes me laugh. It's the rabbit holes I've gone down this summer in terms of regulation and these companies is really disturbing.
Circles.
Yeah, well, exactly. And that's why I kept clear of them. I was like, look, thanks for your time. I'm not signing anything.
That's amazing.
I want to be able to talk to people about it. I mean, you see, I haven't mentioned their name.
No.
I don't know if I will, but
I think Joe did maybe back in a couple of things.
It's fine. I mean, talk. I don't think it matters, but the point is, I wasn't going to sign anything.
No.
Because I want to be able to work with whoever to try and just at least raise awareness so people can protect themselves. Because I had heard one story of a girl who started a small market garden, brought in a load of green waste, put it across the whole place in her first year, nothing grew. And you're just like, if we can prevent that, that's a win. So, yeah.
But you're so lucky that when the Soil Association tested, and they was all right. Because if they didn't, that year would have been wiped out. Yeah,
no, it would have been a real disaster. I mean, it set us back in terms of investment. This is the first year, again, after 4 years, I threw all my money in the field. That's the gamble you take with anyone that's farming. You just go, right, here's my money. I'm going to throw it in that field and hope something comes back.
Nice.
Hope it's not too dry or too hot, right? And then so 4 years later, I'm like, right, after this year, we'll actually be able to save some money this summer and start reinvesting in the farm. I wanted to get another polytunnel on the farm, and some chickens as part of, again, building soil health and something for us. And then I got to the end of the summer and was like, well, we survived. But I mean, to be honest, it's been really, really good in a lot of ways. So I told all my customers, I sent an email out explaining everything in full, like I have to you, and they've been so supportive. It's been really heartwarming, actually, the amount of people that have stepped forward to offer support on that one. It has blown apart my rotation completely, obviously, but in a really good way, because having seen these summer green manure mixes, I've now seen new possibilities for a rotation where I can have more cover crops, but grow more crops at the same time. so I can use a summer mix in certain places, so that I can then put autumn crops in for winter. Have winter covers, and then maybe only have one permanent area of cover for a year or 18 months, rather than a third of the farm in a cover for 2 years. So it's enabled. I haven't figured this out yet, but it's enabled me to see possibilities of a new rotation, which will increase what we can do on the farm in terms of fertility and food. So in that sense, it's been quite good. It's been an opportunity to grow crops out of season because I had to recover. So we're now just starting to get into the crops that I planted to replace the ones we lost.
Yeah.
Which are things that I wouldn't have grown in the same quantities. So it's been really nice to be able to do that. Always looking for a positive, and so I think it might have made me a little bit of a better grower. I hope we'll find out next year. Yeah.
So,
but
is it just you on the farm, or do you have help?
Yeah, so it's primarily me. This summer we had a girl who came and picked fruit and did weeding for us. I think that's probably what we're going to end up with mostly, is I need fruit pickers for a couple of months. There's a girl who helps pack the veg boxes and helps with deliveries. She's great. She started a couple of years ago when I was doing 15 boxes a week. Couldn't afford it, but I was like, right, if I can bring someone in now, it will give me more time on the farm, and also hopefully she'll be good and grow with it. And she's just done really, really well. So that's really nice. And then my stepdad and his missus, they helped with some of the deliveries as well. I mean, my stepdad helped build a lot of the stuff right at the beginning. So I wouldn't have made it without him. But yeah, primarily it's just me. And again, that's why machines, I've had to get some this year. Wheel hose, pedestrian drill, like simple, basic horticultural tools that you can't afford at the beginning.
Yeah.
It's suddenly like, oh wow, actually this is doable. So yeah, it's been really good like that. But it would be really nice. I do think that 4 acres is a bit small in terms of making a living. Like I can pay my bills and I can do okay, but I'm still well below minimum wage. And I do buy in some produce as well from a couple of other local organic farms, stuff that isn't necessarily viable on a smaller scale and the soil doesn't permit so well. But I think there's potential with the council farms to get a little bit more and basically expand the model. Agro Forestry, straight away, put trees in. Everywhere I go, I'm just going to plant trees. Basically, that's going to be the pattern. And then I don't know where the limit is. I want to have some animals on the farm. The desire for manure, I think it's a fundamental part of growing anything really. The way I like to think about it is, if you have a wild ecosystem, you'll have plants and you'll have animals and you'll have fungus. In the current farming landscape around me anyway, where it's mostly arable, you just have plants. That's it. Fungicides are used, then there's no animals. So you're kind of missing the full components. And I think as part of a healthy rotation, to have some well managed animals that, not too many, get the density correct for the land, I think that's a better balance. But that requires a bit more land and more people. So
this is the way we used to do things.
Sorry?
This is the way people used to do things. They had a small holding, they grew everything and had everything they needed in one place.
Yeah, well, exactly.
It worked.
And it's, I mean, even like the regenerative guys on a larger scale are starting to bring animals in because there are benefits. And it's not just the animals, actually. I should say that it's the plants you feed the animals on. So like I say, I bang on about the cover crops. So like a rye vetch mix that I have in for the winter. In the spring, I could graze those. At the moment, I have to top them, and that's how you kill them, right? You just top them.
Yeah.
But why not graze them? Because then there's still benefit to the land from the plants. Also, the animals poo everywhere. But also, then we get the animals later on. Maybe it's just for wool. Maybe you have dairy animals. Maybe you don't want to eat the meat. I don't know. But you see, the animals can still fit in that, whatever you choose to do with them. And yeah, so that plays a big part, I think, certainly in going forward. And again, it goes back to that seed I sowed at the beginning of needing to be able to do it as much as possible within the farm. You know,
Yeah.
so almost self-reliant. There's a little bit of a prepper in me somewhere.
Yeah.
But the way I think about that is if you had a castle, as long as you've got your food and your water within the castle walls and the castle walls are strong, it doesn't really matter what's going on outside.
Mm.
And so if you see a farm in that way, it's like, okay, I need to be able to produce food no matter what, through climate change, through drought, through rain, through whatever. And if I have through, I don't know, a war, so long as I have all the things I need to be able to produce food, the local community can eat.
Yeah.
And then you could extend that out to a country, right? And you can think of it like that. And as a country right now, we import with horticultural products, it's massive. I saw a chart recently. If you took a map of the UK, how much of it do you think would be devoted to horticulture for food? Like as a land area, say like Norfolk or have a guess. How big an area? Fruit and veg.
Smallest county.
Yeah.
1%.
It's the Isles of Orkney.
Yeah.
That's the equivalent land area used for horticulture in this country to grow fruit and veg.
Oh, God.
I wonder
And
what it
four,
used to
4
be.
acres of those is yours.
Yeah. Yeah, well, exactly, which is quite a big area when you put it in that.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things you look at and you go, well, no wonder we buy so much in. And there's a lot of market forces involved with that. You know, it's not easy to grow fruit and veg. You have to get it off the field at a certain time. And I think we can certainly point fingers at supermarkets to an extent. And what I'm sort of offering here with this little 4 acres is you say, look, you can make a living from it. You just have to find a new route to market. This old sort of economy of selling to middlemen, which is supermarkets or commodity buyers. This is finished. It doesn't work. Farmers, look, they're protesting because there isn't enough money. And that's part of it. There's a lot of factors, but that's part of it, is the fact that, you know, you can't make a living selling to middlemen.
No.
So it requires a lot of investment. You know, I have to have a website, we have to do deliveries, I have to answer the phone, I have to answer emails to customers, but it means I get a fair price. And I'm too small for subsidies anyway. So I've had to do this out of necessity. It's like, the question is, do you want to be a grower? Yes, I really like growing veg.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're not going to help you. Do you still want to do it? Yes. Okay, I have to find a way. And the way is I go direct to the customers. They still get a fair price, but I also get a fair price. You know, and there's no middleman. There's no supermarkets telling me how much.
Exactly.
So I think. Sorry,
is there a percentage for that figure that you said, the Isle of Orkney? Is there a percentage? Is it 1% or is it minimal?
I don't know, actually. That's a good question. What percentage of the UK is the Isles of Orkney? It's very small.
Work that out quite easily.
0.01.
It doesn't make any sense, because I know some really big veg growers. You know, some huge ones in Cambridgeshire. But I guess that's, when you look around the landscape, it's probably like where you are in Norfolk. I mean, it's mostly arable, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
You know, they're growing sugar, wheat, occasionally oilseed, but not so much anymore.
No.
You know, and on the lighter soil, you might get potatoes occasionally.
Yeah. We get
the odd carrot
potatoes and barley a lot around here, and sugar beet every so often as well. So,
and I mean, there's the other factor in it is being able to store the produce. So if you grow potatoes and you have a chiller, you can store those, just like grain, and a lot of the arable crops that. When people say, "Oh, we should have more horticulture," like getting tooled up. If you're an arable farmer, you've got your combine, you've got a drill, you might have a roller, a cultivator, and you can run a lot of that off one tractor. Whereas you go into horticulture, suddenly you need a gang of people, you need weeding equipment, you need various types of drills, you need harvest equipment, you need fridges, you need transport, you need to be a route to market so fast you can get it to customers within 24 hours.
Yeah.
So it's an easy transition to go away from horticulture, but it's very hard to come back.
Yeah.
And it's going to require a lot of investment. So, I mean, like I said, it's taken me 4 years to be able to buy some of the kit that's kind of essential. But it can be done, obviously.
The whole idea of Brexit should have been pushing people back in this direction. Like, surely the whole point of not being part of a European Union anymore was to start doing things ourselves.
Yeah.
So why are they not like encouraging that? They seem to be going. All Brexit's done is started making more trade deals with other countries.
Yeah.
Like it's
Well, you're absolutely right. And part of the protests that are going on today, part of it was the fact that there's going to be a big tax on nitrogen in this country. And as a country, we import I think all of the conventional nitrogen fertilizer. And there's a big tax on that EU countries don't have. And it's all for environmental reasons, like I get it on one hand. But on the other hand, you go, okay, so now the EU has an even bigger advantage selling into Britain. So what's that? That's not going to help British farmers at all. Whatever, if you're farming, horticulture or not, that's a big hindrance. So yeah, there's some weird policies. You look at it and you go, it almost, and I don't think this is true, but it almost looks like they want the industry to fail. It's like, let's make it really hard. I mean, I did a little video today on how this budget's going to affect my little farm. And it's indirectly because I buy in produce. I think all produce is going to go up by this time next year. It has to. There's no way it can't. People have to pay their staff more. They have to pay more for fertilizer.
Oh yeah.
The basic farm payments are just being gotten rid of. They were being phased out. They're just gone. So it's a massive challenge. And for me, I'm small and kind of agile and still in that fighting mode and building. So there's me employed, Shelley's self-employed by her own choice. So I've got to find money to pay for my salary. But again, where's that come from? I have to grow more. It's as simple as that. So it's just made it harder to be a business and a farm than it was a few months ago for no apparent reason. Okay.
Wow.
Well, doesn't make any sense to me, but if that's what you want to do.
There's loads of chat in the chat, but I don't know whether we've missed anything, Mark. If there's any questions, put them in that little question box so we can find them easy before they disappear.
I've been trying to keep up with it. A lot of people say, Jenny's saying her daughter's studying forestry, agriculture, like what you practice.
Oh yeah.
She use any sprays. She said it's like hitting a brick wall. Everything has to be sprayed on fertilizers.
Yeah, it's strange, isn't it? I mean, it's so the way when I talk about agroforestry, I think a good way of trying to get it into conventional farmers and growers is you say, look, the old system where we had hedges, a lot of people want more hedges planted, but the reason they were pulled out is to make farms efficient. But if you were to set up agroforestry so the trees are 30 meters apart, as much as I don't want people to spray, they can still spray their crops, but you've effectively made more field margin for wildlife by having those trees there, right? Yeah. So that big barren field of just wheat that's just completely sprayed, a portion of it will be taken out and not sprayed because there'll be trees there, and hopefully productive trees like apples, so the farmer will still get some money and income from those areas, and they won't be sprayed. So there'll be wildlife corridors across the fields. But again, going back to the whole new routes to market, it's agroforestry seems to offer that because it offers a more diverse cropping whilst offering wildlife to the farm, but also a new route for the farmer to say, well, I've got to sell these apples, so I can sell. Where am I going to sell them? Like, it just to explore new ways to market without these big buyers. I think it's got so many answers. There's too much good. I'm too biased. There's got to be something wrong with it.
Well, and you're stopping with soil erosion.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
improving drainage, which is going to help
Well, here's a real
flooding.
abstract one that you might not think of. So you've just had snow, right? So Suffolk, we get big snow drifts because the fields are empty. So the snow
Yeah.
just whips across,
Yeah.
stops at the hedge, which is where the road is. But if you
Yeah.
had trees breaking up the field, it would spread that out. So like very small things, there's just loads of benefits.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
first heard about it from a guy in Cambridgeshire. This was probably 15 years ago. And the soil there is very peaty and it blows away. So this guy was like, well, we need to stop this. So he put apple trees in. Perfect. He gets a crop. It's they crop at a different time from his arable crops. So there's a spread of labour, really
Yeah.
easy to implement, and more
Just
food.
slows the wind down.
Just slows the wind down, stops it blowing away.
Mm.
Simple, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's yeah, so it's a win-win, I think, on that one. And you can be creative. It doesn't have to be fruit. I've chosen fruit because I need them to pay quickly.
Yeah.
But you could say if I owned a big farm, I would plant some oak trees, and that would be either for my pension or some money for my kids to start something, right? And they cut them down and plant some more. You could do so. There's a guy called Martin Wolf. He's passed away now. I've forgotten the name of his farm. It was one of the first agroforestry farms in Suffolk. He's got rows of hazel hedging that he takes out on rotation that were for biomass to heat his house. So again, another use. Again, someone's just written nut trees. Exactly. We don't grow any nuts in this country. Why not do that? So yeah, it just wins really. You protect your crops, and away you go. Yeah.
Brilliant.
So if you talk to anyone that knows anything bad about agroforestry, please send them my way. I'd love to hear it.
Someone asked in the questions, will you use the grid method with animals?
I don't know what the grid method is, but I guess what they mean is like so strip grazing. So graze an area, a small area, and then move them on regularly, that kind of thing. Yeah, I would think so. I think that's the best. Like, that's the most efficient way of making sure the animals graze it down, but then they get fresh grass every day rather than kind of like if you put them in a big field, they just kind of walk around and poo everywhere and make a mess. But if you just move them on systematically, I think that's probably what they mean. And again, I learned that on the dairy farm. You have to be very accurate with a dairy farm. So you have to graze the grass in the summer exactly all the way down to make sure the animals are getting the right nutrition. So you basically want to not squash them into a small field, but give them enough that they're going to eat all of it in a day.
Yeah.
And then you can actually measure that with a special tool that says, right, there's X amount of grass in there. So they need that much. So we need to give them this area. If you see what I mean.
We've strip fed the horses before. We just literally move the electric fence another 10 foot and then let them have that bit tomorrow and then move it again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's nice and systematic, and it's nice for the animals. They get excited. You're like, oh, look, new grass. It's it's pretty cool.
It's easy to muck them out as well.
Yeah,
like you say, if you let them roam across a 5-acre field, it's a pain in the backside to go and pick it all up.
yeah, exactly. I think on the ground I've got, I would probably house them in winter because it's very heavy ground, and they may cause more damage than good. But also, I'd really like to have the manure somewhere where I can dig it out and compost it and put it in veg beds, like where I need it, so I can like put it in the tunnels for tomatoes and cucumbers and things like that.
Yeah.
So it becomes quite an important tool. Everything's just about feed the soil, feed the plants. That's the motto really. So
got another question in the question box saying, what's the biggest challenge for you going into 2025 with 4 acres?
The biggest challenge, I've already thought of this, and it is my rotation for next year. I need to get it spot on. I need to make sure that I can get the right amount of get my successions right, so that I don't have empty ground for too long. It's not something I'm particularly good at yet, but I think to make the farm really efficient and to make it earn its true potential and get the right green manures in at the right time for the right period of time so we get the soil health, it's got to all be done really well. and it's going to require quite a lot of planning. And so that's my biggest challenge, I think, because that way I can offer more to my customers in terms of variety, and more interesting crops, and also rely on bought in stuff less. So
I guess you must be doing some quite detailed, say, diaries of what, where, how they grow, what you get from it. How much water.
I'll be honest, I'm not very disciplined with that.
Right.
A lot of it is mental notes. I do have a diary. I have to keep a diary for the Soil Association of what my yields are. So for organic certification, you have to tell them the date you sowed the seed, how many you sowed, the date you planted them, the date you started harvesting them, and how much you harvested. So it's
well, that's
quite,
basically what I said anyway. Yeah. So
you keep all of that information. On top of that, there's a cropping plan, which is, so you start the year, as everyone does, with a plan, and then you just throw it away and do what you want, because that's just the way it works. So there is that detail in there. I will admit, in the summer it gets a bit wavy. Sometimes I'll forget to write it that day, and it won't go in as quite the right thing. So yeah, I mean, that's such an important tool. If there is anyone out there that wants to get good at it, writing stuff down, massive help, because I've got a pretty good memory for when I've planted things, but it's because I'm a bit of a weirdo and a bit obsessed. But if you're, a hobby gardener, write it all down, because you'll become so much better if you can remember the next year. Oh, I put that in on that day, and it did really well, and repeat it. The same.
Definitely something I want to get better at. I'm always thinking, I wish I'd wrote that down last year. I wish I'd have, kept more records, because I think it just makes your life so much easier.
Oh, it does. Yeah, and also, like, you can look at patterns as well. You can look back at 5 years and go, well, hang on, if I did that 5 years ago, but the weather was different, or the weather was like this, and you can draw a map going forward, and it helps you plan. So when you come to do your cropping plan, you look back on the year and you go, well, that didn't work then, so maybe I'll put it here. But it did work that year, so I'll just tweak it a bit and meet in the middle. Do you know what I mean? There's like lots of little fiddly things you can do with it. But if you don't have a record of it, I mean, good luck.
That's one thing I'd really love to look at of Charles Dowding's, because I bet his records are absolutely amazing.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Because he knows everything, where it's been, what the weights, everything he picks, he weighs. I bet it's absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, and a lot of his posts, he'll go, this was sown on this date and this day in this place, and then it's one of those things. I get a little bit annoyed at myself, but I direct it at him, because it exposes my own flaws.
Oh yeah, no, that's everybody. It's not just you.
I don't want to watch that. But then you pull back in, going, but what did you do? So it's No, he's got some good stuff, and like I say, when I first started, I went no dig, and it was fully based on what I saw of his stuff. It's I would be doing a lot of what he does at home if I was hobby gardener. 100%, just makes a lot of sense. I think you could probably scale it if you're on lighter soil. So doing what I'm doing, if you're on sandy or peaty soil, I think you might get away with it. But like, if I want to get any bigger, I need a planter for the tractor, and they have quite a wide coulter that parts the soil, and you just, on this soil, it's not going to happen. So that's one of my biggest challenges. I think generally it's all a challenge, really. Getting the fruit in, that's going to be hard. I want to get that right. We've got a lot of strawberries that I need to get out. I failed on the nutrition this year. I've never grown them before, and this was the second year. So first year, they all looked beautiful. They cropped all summer. This year, one variety called Flamenco stopped cropping in July, and the leaves are a bit yellowy red. So I think it's a slight iron deficiency. So I need to work on getting that right, because they're such. Anyone that's starting a market garden, grow strawberries. They will really help you, particularly a June bearer. when you're in the hungry gap and there's very little other produce around, those strawberries become gold.
Yeah.
Everyone buys them. If you can take them straight to market as well. So I know strawberry growers around here that are closing because they sell them wholesale, and the price is rubbish. But if you can take them to the customer, farmer's market or a box scheme, you'll get a good price for them. And honestly, they're brilliant. But figure out how to feed them. Foliar feeds, I think. Midsummer.
There's a couple more questions come in.
Go for it.
Kim again said, do you see having a smaller farm as an opportunity for polyculture?
What's polyculture?
Opposite to monoculture. So you are, I suppose, you're doing polyculture. Yeah.
100%. And again, there's strength in that because, again, this year, case in point, so we lost 40% of the crops, but because there's so many different crops, such as the strawberries, the apples, the brassicas that didn't get any of this manure or aren't affected by it and didn't take it up, that we were able to get through it. If I was only growing squash, that would have been it, game over. Like, hold up, go home. And I, again, I repeat it, like you look at, there's a phrase biomimicry, which people use, oddly enough, in engineering, like to design trains and airplanes and cars and stuff, who's shaped like a bird and things like this. But if you look at a wild ecosystem, the healthy one will have a real range of plants and animals, all sorts of species. And then you look at a farming landscape, it's got one. You go, okay, well, that's not what nature wants. No place in nature is there one thing growing anywhere.
No.
It's not real. It's not a place. So apply that to a farm. There's strength in that. Like I say, if you have a bad year for something, say it's a wet, damp year and all your tomatoes get blight and all your potatoes get blight, well, your beans are going to do really well. Your brassicas will do really well. So it's kind of, that's okay. You accept one thing's a bit rubbish, the others are doing really well, and you end up with a better balance. And I think a more robust business, but also food system. Like, people want to eat, so that's important, really important. There are more questions.
Sorry, I'm just there's another one. How have you coped with the wet weather this year, and what have you done about the slug pressure?
I was waiting for that. I was going to say, slugs ate everything. It's actually another reason I decided to get a power harrow in the spring. Because my first lot of calabrese broccoli, about 3/4 of it got eaten by slugs, and that was in a no-dig bed. And what I find is where this soil, the clay soil, it kind of caps on top. It's beautiful underneath, but it caps on top, and the slugs live just under that cap. So when it dries out, you get this clay dry bit, and then it's moist underneath. And then they come out at night and they eat your broccoli and they go back under there. So one of the things I did to deal with that is just stir up with a power harrow that much, a couple of centimeters of soil, just to make their lives miserable. If they're going to make my life miserable, I'm going to make theirs miserable. And it also helped me control the weeds a bit, just because I can then get a hoe through a lot easier, which helps the slug burden. If you can create a dry area around your beds, slugs won't, I mean, they will, but they're not going to get across as often. They like cover, they like places to hide, they don't want to be exposed. Other than that, the wet was a real pain. I mean, so my polytunnels flooded most of last winter, maybe 5 times. I actually lost, what did I lose? I think it was a whole bed of pak choi just didn't grow. And this summer, after the summer, I decided to rotivate it because you could see some areas where, because it had flooded, the soil had sunk. Even though it was undercover, there was like a river running through and it just pushed all the air out. So I had a bed of purple basil and it was so obvious. You could see exactly where the water had flowed. It just wasn't growing. So I decided then I would just rotivate it. And I might do that once every few years. Just to get some air back in there. Depends on what happens, but So the rain in that sense, it was horrible. I think I'm quite lucky in the fact that being horticulture and being small and planting things by hand, when it is wet, I'm still able to get on. If I was all mechanized, I mean, disaster. Would have been very, very hard.
I guess you use plugs all the time. You don't direct sow very much.
I do now. So something else I bought this year was a yang seeder, because again, after this contamination, I plowed up a bit of ground. Was like, I need to get things in quickly. It was always on the list of things I wanted to buy. Was a drill of some sort, but they're expensive. So I put it off and put it off and put it off, and then I thought, well, look, I have to now. So I have bought that, and I will use it a lot more next year. Mostly for beetroot, probably for some chard, for beans, dwarf beans. And I'm thinking I'll probably use it for radishes and things like that as well.
Yeah.
But mostly I do plugs, because what plugs enable you to do, or enable me to do in this case, what I'm saying about getting succession plantings, is if I have things ready in plugs, I can harvest and then plant basically the same day.
Exactly. So you're saving 3 or 4 weeks at least.
Yeah, exactly. So I think what the most likely scenario is certain things in the spring, such as radishes under fleece. I'll probably drill those, and then we'll go for plugs for successions after that. Just because it gives you that speed of turnover, which we really need to rely on now.
One more quick question. Jenny said, have you got any ponds for frogs and things, for the slugs?
I haven't. I don't really have the space at the moment. But saying that, just the other side of the hedge in the other farmer's field, there's a spring. He's got this patch that's just soaking wet, and he's always complaining about it. And so I would really, really like to have a way of storing water for irrigation on the farm. So I think a combination of a pond or something based around that spring might form part of that. I haven't fully formulated that. I don't know what that would look like, and that's a big investment to do it. But it'd be really nice to have some sort of pond on the farm.
Sorry, I just had a vision of Del Boy and Peckham Spring there. Oh, brilliant. Oh, Greg, that has been fantastic. I could sit and talk to you for another 2 hours easy, but it's 9:10.
Yes.
And you're probably going to be up early.
We're only down the road, so if you're ever passing by, give us a shout.
Fantastic. Yeah, definitely. Definitely keep in touch. At this point of the show, Mark has his lightning round of questions. Are you up for doing that?
Go on then. Yeah, please go ahead.
Finish it off. So, first question, tea or coffee?
Tea.
Flowers or edibles? That's obvious what that's going to be.
Well, I don't know actually. Yeah, no edibles. I do grow flowers. I grow quite a lot.
Beach or forest?
Forest.
Forest, I was going to say. Again, what you do for a living.
It used to be beach. When I worked on boats, it was beach.
Of course.
Now forest.
Of course, yeah.
What's your go-to emoji for a text message?
At the moment, strong arm.
Yes. If you could have only one snack for the rest of your life, what would it be?
A snack. Raspberry jam on hot buttery toast.
Oh.
Homemade raspberry jam. Nothing better.
Yeah, exactly.
Finish the sentence. My perfect day would be
on the farm.
You're doing the right thing. That's sure.
Yes.
Sowing seeds or potting on? I guess sowing seeds.
Yes. Sowing seeds.
Spring or summer?
Oh, spring or summer?
Yeah.
Can I say in the middle? Because like that bit where it like sort of
crossover.
May into June.
I'll let you have that, but you have to invent a name for it if you want to go in the middle.
Brummer.
Yeah. Sprummer.
What is today's favourite plant?
Right now, today?
Yeah.
Chinese star no, radicchio. What's the variety? The one I've been picking today. Castel Franco. Absolutely stunning.
Love
Beautiful looking thing. You'll see there's one on my story, or I made a post about one earlier. Beautiful radicchio. The most amazing psychedelic looking thing ever. It's like artwork.
I think
I saw it. It's
you
about
could
that
grow
big.
them as an you could grow them as an ornamental in a just in a mixed bed.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
they can.
yeah. And if you let them grow to a flower, they have bright blue flowers on them, a big stem.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
They're really nice.
Next one: unlimited compost or unlimited seed.
Unlimited seed.
Ooh.
See, most people we have on go unlimited compost, but because you're of
I
what
think
you do,
it's easier to make compost. So I've just started collecting wood chip from some local tree surgeons. After this year, I was like, I need to be able to get a good source of compost.
Yeah.
So I'm making loads of it.
Yeah.
Become obsessed. But seed saving is on the list of things I need to learn to do for everything.
That's another thing I want to talk about, but we're
yeah, another time. But it's so like that's a skill unto its own. And talk about rotations. You've got to factor in seed saving rotations and plant breeding and F1 seeds. I mean, I can't live without them. So like, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, we'll save that. So yes, seed, please.
If you could have one gardening superpower, what would it be? You could have farming superpower if you want.
To summon ladybirds. Armies of ladybirds. Yeah, just like, you walk into your tunnel and you see aphids everywhere and you just go, and ladybirds just descend out of nowhere. Loads of them eat all the aphids.
Definitely. You need some kind of whistle to call the ladybirds.
Yeah, exactly.
And final one, if you could choose one plant to describe yourself, what would it be?
One plant.
One of our guests called himself a tromboncino, but we're not going to say why.
Oh, come on, brain, do something. Can I just say brassicas?
Yeah.
Old reliable brassicas. Just they're like the staples. That's what I want to be. Just always there, all seasons. Brassica.
You can have a brassica all year round, can't you?
Yeah, you can. Of some sort.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
That's me.
Fantastic.
Brassica.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, mate. Like I said, we could talk for hours and hours, but
absolutely. No, yeah. Thanks for the invite. Good to talk to you both.
Thanks for coming on. It's fantastic. Thanks ever so much.
To get you on again, because I'm sure it will have gone down.
Anytime. Like I say, open invitation. Just give us
maybe if we do it in the summer, we could do it down actually on the farm and you can show us around.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that'd be really fun.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Excellent. All right, Greg. Thanks ever so much.
Cool.
We'll see you next
Good day.
Mate.
See you later.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye. Just keep going and going, can't you? Just keep talking. We could stay there for hours.
Didn't even get like any of the questions I'd wrote down covered, but yeah.
No, but that's what happens sometimes, isn't it? You can keep going and going.
I think someone's getting cold.
It's
shivering.
Oh.
Can we go in? Can we go in? Look, I'm shivering.
Mine are gone now. They've left me. Oh, that was really good.
Yeah,
really good.
Really.
9:15. And that's a long one, Mark. We haven't had a long one for a while.
Yeah. So we'll sign off till next week.
We will. Yeah. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you all soon.
Yeah.
See
you next Tuesday.
Dash.
We're going
later.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Through the Garden Gate.